Company Heroes, the board game, second edition, is on Kickstarter right now. I am super pumped. I hope you are too. Let's dive right in. Okay, guys, Company Heroes, the board game, second edition. This is by Bad Crow Games, and they are day one right now, so 21 days left to go in this campaign. Still at 2,000 backers. That's a great number for these guys, and 361,000. Today, we are planning to do the Should You Back on Company Heroes, the board game. I backed the first edition of this game, so I'm going to give you as much information as I can to really help you if you're trying to understand if this is something you should be backing, to make the best decision possible, because to be honest, I love this game, and I think you would too, especially if you like historical war games. So what is Company Heroes, the board game? Well, flat out, it is a port of the computer game made by Sega and Relic. That is a really popular RTS World War II game. They're coming out with the Company Heroes 3 PC game relatively soon. So this is a great opportunity if you're a person who likes those strategy war games to be looking to implement it to the tabletop space. And that is the reason why I got it. I'm a big Company of Heroes fan. I love the PC game, and so I picked this up kind of hoping it would be a good implementation. And the first edition did very well trying to accurately represent the PC game on the board game space, but there were some problems to that, and mostly it was a little bit clunky because they were trying to be so literal in terms of the way the PC game played to how they wanted the board game to play. They wanted to be very truists to the way they worked. But unfortunately, that was kind of clunky. It didn't really implement well to a tabletop space. There are different platforms, different mediums, the way things play. So after first edition was released, they had 18 months of play testing. They really dived into the rule book for this one and said, how can we make this game a better living game? And here we are with the second edition. And that's really what they did. They said, how can we take this game and really focus on the simplicity of the rules, make it so they all make sense, and really make it so the game is more fun as a tabletop game, but also works in the Company Heroes realm. And I have played this game with the second edition rules. I played on Tabletop Simulator. Haven't played yet in person, but even playing Tabletop Simulator, I was so excited and having so much fun. And in fact, I was telling the publisher, no, I want to keep playing. I want to go another round. I want to go another round. And I was saying to myself, man, I love this game. I don't do that very often, especially on Tabletop Simulator, because it's just a weird medium to play games on. So that tells you right there how much I love this game. So if I'm sounding a little bit biased in terms of should you back, just know it's because I really, really, really like this system. So what is the Company Heroes board game? What are we looking at for this Kickstarter? Well, there are two different types of pledges that we're going to be looking at. You've got new backers, if you're new to the system, and we've got a returning backer system. So either one, if you're there, I will talk about both of them to give you guys as much information as possible. You can just see here, this just looks so cool. I mean, if you look at games that are really popular in World War II, like Memoir 44, and then I compare it to like Company Heroes, I'm like, man, look at this. This looks so good. And that's really it. So right off the bat, though, I want to make sure I mention this so people are aware. There is an early bird bonus. If you back in the first 72 hours, you'll be getting this commander that's going to be kind of a universal commander that's generated from the community. That's going to be free. So might as well do that. Why not? Because it's free if you're going to be backing this game. And then obviously they're talking about what's going to be new in 2, bigger battles, better balance. We kind of talked about that better balance as well. They're going to be adding more boards to the game. And they actually changed the way the hexes on this game works to make it so that they're more modularity. So you can actually combine some of the new maps together to make really big square maps, have really big epic games where you could potentially play up to 8 players if you wanted to. I've never done that. It would be cool. I don't know how long it would take. It'd be so cool. And that's what they're talking about right here. Revised and improved rulebook with the 40 new maps. Now, I have dived in through the whole rulebook here, just trying to take a look at what was new. And what I really like is they've kind of highlighted everything that's blue is a new rule. And so you can, I'm not going to sit here and read the rulebook to you guys. I've gone through a lot of this stuff. But you can see they've really kind of broken down and changed a lot of the rules. through this game. It still feels like the first edition in the way, like it still hold on to like the core structure. It's just so much cleaner in terms of that. So which one was I on? I was on this one. They do have a new assault rules, which is great because it really changed the dynamic of the game. It's such a minor rule, but I'll kind of talk about it. The idea of assault is in the first edition, you weren't able to move onto a hex controlled by another unit. Enemy unit, you just had to shoot each other from adjoining hexes. Assault means you can actually rush in now and say, you know what, I want to contest that spot. So you have someone standing here on a control point, a victory point, or a munitions or fuel point. You can actually jump in there to prevent them from decapping your point, or prevent them from capping the point if you want to prevent them from that. And then you just have a combat between your soldiers with no bonuses, like no cover bonuses, just, grisly fighting. There are ways to prevent that. There's like you can build barbed wire entrenchments, or if it's a tank, you can have tank traps that kind of prevent that kind of stuff from happening. So there is that strategic element still in the game, even with these additional rules. So let's scroll on down. Here's some text. We're going to skip those right now. Let's scroll on down to the pledge levels and talk about it, because like I said, there's two different things we're going to be looking at. We've got the core set. For $99, this is everything you need for 2 players. It's going to include the U.S. Faction, which is the green, and the German Wehrmacht, which is the gray. And so those are just the standard factions right now, but there are additional factions if you want to customize and add more to it. And then, so that's for new backers. If you are a returning backer, they have the second edition update kit for $50. This is going to include the 2 new maps that are included in this core set, as well as the updated commanders, because all of the commanders have been retooled because everything's been rebalanced. They've gone through all of the call-ins and all of the upgrades and changed all those. You're going to be getting some new dice and some tokens and whatnot. So just all over refreshing. So bringing your game from first edition to fully second edition. Okay. The other thing they're going to be talking about is all of the stretch goals that were released in the first Kickstarter campaign will be pre-released in this one. So you're getting all those. So on top of that, any new stretch goals are released in this campaign, you're getting like double value in there. So these are the original stretch goals. So these are pre-stretch rewards. These are from the original campaign. You got the Twin Tigers. You got the Churchill with the ARV cannon there. The Hounds, the Priests. Just so many cool vehicles overall. The Panzer Shreks, Bazookas, Piats, and then the engraved vehicles, which I did an unboxing for this video when I did the first campaign. I did an unboxing for the Sherman, or for the whole thing, and I was really surprised to see all of them labeled, and that you can see it's right there. So they have a guide here, and I thought it was actually pretty good. Very rarely do I go to a campaign and see their recommendations in terms of guides. And I'll give you guys my recommendations, but again, this is something that you can take a look at. So they have, again, the core set, $99. If you're returning back, I already talked about that. Then they have recommendations for enlistment. So basically, what are you looking for? So they have the terrain pack as well as the faction pack. So you've got the Soviets, you've got the British, and you've got the OKW. They kind of talk about right here like which ones they recommend. And then if you're looking for a completionist or solo co-op, you've got the Fog of War as well as solo and Lost Brigades. Lost Brigades is something I'm super excited for. I think it's adding a lot of cool features to the game, adding even more variety to your call-ins. So I would, if you're a first-time backer, make sure you get Lost Brigades as well, because it's going to be really, really good. And then you've got the hardcore enlistments. I don't know if I would call it that. It's just adding more variety to your call-ins and to your game. You've got the terrain pack as well as the legacy map pack that's going to have a whole bunch of more maps. And then you've got the terrain pack 3, which I think is pretty cool. It's adding a lot more terrain features that are kind of smaller in scale. The terrain pack 2 adds a lot of big stuff, like a lot of destroyed buildings, a lot of big mega structures. Terrain pack 3, I think will also have some big stuff, but it has a lot of little things too, which I really enjoy. And so they talk about the new expansions. So what is new for the returning backers, veterans? The biggest one I'm super excited for is probably Lost Brigades, and then probably Terrain Pack 3. I'll be having to get the Legacy Map Pack because I have all the maps right now. I need to convert them over. Because I said they changed the hex system from the first edition games to second edition. So they kind of retweaked the maps, made them a little bit more balanced, also changed the way the victory points and the resource nodes are on those maps. And if you want to combine maps, right now they don't really align very well. In the new version of the maps, they align now perfectly, so you can kind of build on top of each other and have really cool big maps. The Lost Brigade, this is really cool. It's going to add a bunch of more vehicles for every faction, as you can see here, and then some modular systems. And that's really what they want to talk about when they're talking about the stretch goals. We'll get to there in a bit. But one of the things they want to do is, instead of adding just more tanks and more stuff, they said, what if we take your original turret tank system and just give you better turrets, or giving you variety? Because that's kind of what they did in World War II. They would take the Sherman chassis here, the super system, the super structure, and they would just say, okay, we're going to put a 76 millimeter turret on there now. Now we've got an Easy 8. They would try to keep the body and change the weapon system on there. So that's kind of what you can see right here with this. What is this? The half track, the 257, I think is what it's called. I believe that's a 257. I can't remember, but I always try to remember all these vehicles. There's so much stuff though. So basically, though, with this, you're going to have these additional extension cards, which you can play adjacent to your normal call-in, which is going to give you just more call-in stuff, as well as new assault commanders that are really more aggressive commanders, really playing into that assaulting mechanic that we've already covered earlier. Okay, so then you got the solo and co-op and Fog of War. The Fog of War is new. I haven't played with that yet, but the idea is basically you'll have these tiles kind of flipped upside down as things are moving around, so you really don't know what's happening until you get close enough to it, and then they'll reveal themselves and you can see what you're doing. I think they actually have a mode in here that you can actually play Fog of War like against your friend, not just against the computer or the AI. And I think that's really interesting. They called it the quick mode. Oh, what am I doing? Okay, and then we've got Terrain Pack 3, which I said was new. This is the one I'm really excited for because I love these hedgerows, these stone walls, and these rocks. They're going to provide different types of cover. Now, I'm assuming, I don't know exactly how they're going to be doing these rules. This is still relatively new in terms of production. I'm not sure if they're just going to take the indicators that are on the map, because the map will have yellow lines or green lines or red lines to kind of tell you what is movable and what cover is what. So I'm not sure if these just kind of go on the board as it is, like right now, and tell you, okay, this is what this is, and you just kind of place it on there, or if this changes, like buildable cover, like sandbags. I'm assuming it's just going to go on top of the map of where things already are, but I'm not 100% positive. And you can see back here, they have these superstructures. This is going to be a new building, just massive, just totally massive. And you can see this is the building here. This is actually pretty big. Normally these house buildings, this thing looks like it's double that size, and really will be really great when we're playing like Soviet-based maps, because they have all these big factories. I mean, that's Soviets for you. And so being able to play like a Stalingrad map and have these big factory sections, I think it'll be so freaking cool. And then again, you talked about that legacy map pack. The original first edition maps have been re-advised, and they've changed those hexes that I've kind of talked about so they can play together. And they really show a good picture here of that system and how they link together so that you can have a bigger square map to play with and have a big battle going on. And then we've got just additional things. This is actually quality of life here, these dice and tray packs for your vehicles. So that's pretty nice that they're doing that. So right here, they're going to talk about the faction player sets. I'm going to briefly run through each faction so you guys are aware of what they are. You get the Soviets at $45, pretty good value there. Soviets have a lot of early infantry and then very, very heavy tanks. So their mid-game is kind of interesting because they're very good at doing quick rushes, and then they got to hold out to get their big, stupid, heavy tanks up, like the IS-2 or the KV-8 or KV-2. The British are all about holding into their grounds, kind of being an attrition army, really trying to force the opponents to come to them and be over-aggressive, and then they can pick them off with their heavy, heavy tanks. OKW is a very versatile army in terms of their troops are very powerful. And again, they also have very heavy tanks with the Panther and the King Tiger. So they're kind of similar to what I would say to the Soviets in terms of playstyle, but for the German faction. US are just OP, in my opinion. I mean, they've always been strong. They've got really strong infantry, really strong tanks. Their early, mid, and late game are all fairly good. And the Wehrmacht is basically the same for the US. Just an overall balanced faction. Nothing's too crazy on one end or the other. Just a very, very good faction. And so those are the 5 factions, 2 German, 3 Allied, that are available to play. And then you have additional expansions. Now, these are ones that I was able to pick up in the original campaign. You got the Elite Commanders, Train Pack 1, Train Pack 2. With my recommendation, I definitely think that Train Pack 1 is a necessity to have, just because it's going to really build the game and take away the little tokens, the cardboard tokens, and give you a little bit more of an aesthetic pleasing look. Especially with these sandbags, you've got the tank traps, the barbed wire, and these flags that basically represent, who controls what victory points are great. You've got these buildings as well. You basically put the infantry units when they're garrisoned inside of a building, or when they go inside of a building, they basically sit inside here, and that's what to hold that point and get more coverage. Train Pack 2, I have it. I haven't yet played with this one. In terms of gameplay, I just haven't had a situation where we want to play a big cathedral city destruction map. It just hasn't come up yet. So I love it. In fact, when I show this game off, I almost always pull out Train Pack 2 and say, look at this. But then we don't play with it. So whatever. I mean, take that as you will. But it's definitely, I love this too. Yeah, you've got the blowing up one where you have these guys getting nuked off. Elite Commanders, this one just really brings a lot of the heavier tanks to the factions. So we've got the King Tigers, you've got the KV2s, the SU-75, or what is this? The IS-2 rather. You've got the Fireflies, you Calliopes, you got everything. All the biggest tanks that were found in World War II, the big stupid tanks, Jagdpanzers, they're all found here in the Elite Commanders. So if you're looking for those heavier call-ins, if you want the big tanks to come on the battlefield, Elite Commanders is where you want to look. And then you've got the mini pack bundles. These are more of a unique custom factions, like kind of niche-y, where they're still going to have really good call-ins, but they're very unique. So you've got these Stugs. Stugs were smaller tanks, just still efficient, but they didn't have rotating turrets. They're all about shooting straight. Same thing with the Elephant here. And you get some additional infantry units for the U.S. faction with that one. And then looks like they look like, I'm not quite sure what that is. Might be an Su-85. That looks like Su-85s with the Eastern reinforcements, but I'm not positive. Su-85s were also tank destroyers, very much like these Stugs, but for the Russians, no rotating turrets, so they had to rotate their tracks to kind of move around. And so here we are, the stretch goal rewards. So you can already see we were already unlocking a lot of stretch goals. You got some new maps, some operation decks. We didn't talk about the operation decks. I had a chance to play with these operation decks, and it really changes the entire flow, the battle flow of the game. The way these operation decks work is whoever's the first player, and first player will rotate each time. They're going to draw a card, and they're going to look at it. And on the top, you can kind of see it says 2 to 4 or 3 to 5. When you look at it, it's going to have a number. It's going to say, like, in the 2 to 4 section, it might say 2, and in the 3 to 5 section, it might say 4. Well, you're going to pick one, and you're going to slide it down, face down, so you're not showing your reveal. And what that is saying is how many activations each player is going to have that round. And what I mean by activations is each turn, you get to activate so many units. And so you can have, like, say 5 or 6 units, but if you only do 2 activations, that means that turn we're only moving 2 units. So if someone like a Russian builds a lot of infantry and has a lot of stuff, maybe the German's like, oh, I need to slow you down a little bit. We're going to play some slower activations while I just kind of hold my points and get some more resources. Because this game is also resource management. It's about holding the resource points, getting to late game, upgrading your buildings, upgrading your infantry through veteran points, and going from there. And we didn't really talk about that either. So we got some more commanders here. You got the new design mission maps. We got the commanders for USA, OKW, Wehrmacht, and British. And here we are. So we have turret mods. This is something I was talking about. How can we take the superstructure of the tank and just make it better and have a new variant of that? So most likely, I bet this U.S. commander doesn't look like in this art. I was going to say they're going to have maybe a call-in an Easy 8 or a Sherman 76. That's what this is. The 76 turret, it's a 76 millimeter turret. It's a bigger turret. It's a more late war, I think 1944 era tank. And so we're going to be able to call these in. So that is really cool because as I showed in the unboxing, all these turrets can come off, so you can kind of change them, especially when you have this like Churchill system, which had a whole bunch of different types of turret systems on there. And so that's great. So you've got a whole bunch of different gameplays. I have not played real time yet in terms of we're both moving at the same time. I've only played I go, you go, I go, you go. I would really like to try the real time with the updated rules. So that's something I really want to check out. Invest in your troops. They're just showing you how you can upgrade your troops. Basically, we're getting anti-tanks. So that's what they're showing, changing to Panzerschrecks here. You know what I really would like? If I would love to have the company do this. They have basically 2 models right now for infantry with pretty much every faction. I wish we had one more model, like maybe like a submachine gun model, because there's units like the Panzer Grenadiers, which use well, at least in the video game they use the submachine guns. I would love to have like 1 or 2 so we can put them in here, and then you can have the Panzerschrecks when you upgrade them to anti-tank. I think that'd be really cool, but that's just me wishing and a dream. I also, wow, this is great. I love this. A highly subjective comparison to some of our favorite World War II strategy games. And they're basically saying how much complexity to tactical depth and how much economic resource management. This is a perfect segue to kind of talk about what I forgot to mention earlier. Company of Heroes, when you look at the PC game and the board game, is all about resource management and territory control. It's about getting onto the field, making sure you're controlling not only the victory point nodes, because that's how you win the game, but as well as the resource nodes, the fuel, munition, and manpower nodes, so you can actually generate income to reinforce your units, because you're going to be losing things through the battle. You got to be able to reinforce things. You got to get the fuel so you can call things in. That is the core gameplay elements of the piece of the board game. If you want to get to level 3 of your compound, of your tier 3, which gets you tanks, well, you got to have fuel reserves, and to get those, you got to control the fuel points so you can spend them. So that's what the resource management, and I do agree, this is very high up here, because that's really the core function of the game. And I do think that I would maybe a little bit more complexity in the tactical depth here, but I can agree that it's probably more resource management heavy, because it's less about positioning sometimes and more about overall, it's hard to say, about the area control. I'm trying to figure it out here on the fly. I do agree, though, resource management is probably higher than the complex tactical depth. I've also not played Tide of Iron, so I'm kind of curious to try that out at some point, because I really do love World War II games. And that will basically wrap it up. I do want to touch on the shipping, which they talk about down here, and kind of finishing up with my thoughts on this campaign. The estimated shipping for 2nd edition upgrade kits, looking really good at $16. I mean, this is... At $16, it's hard to beat that price, especially in today's environment. This might be one of the last campaigns I've seen in a long time that's offering a true great value for the backers. And the core set 2nd edition, this is the actual big box for new backers coming at 19. Very reasonable. Now, we're obviously not talking about add-ons. That's all going to be changing, so make sure you are aware of that. These are all estimates as well. They have this thing down here for full bundles. There are a wide range of possible bundles, and shipping prices to start vary depending on contents and regions. But our larger bundles, 6 to 12 items, 20 pounds on average, had these prices. And I think that's fair. I think that's an accurate. And I kind of mentioned that just prior to me reading that. As you add on more, it does change your shipping because you're adding more stuff. And I've seen people buy like 2 core sets of this game so that they can have massive big battles. So that's something to consider as well. So let's cut it back over to me on my big camera. And if you haven't already learned, I will tell you that I am very stoked about this game. I took these notes when I was playing with the publisher, and I didn't really talk to him very much. I didn't really talk about it. Talk about the operations deck. That was the deck where you're going to flip. Assault, we talked about that. So maybe I kind of did this. Simplified rules. They wanted to keep the weight scale at a 3.0 on the BGG. That was kind of their focus in terms of making this accessible, but also having it heavy on the complexity. So I think that's really cool that they are forethoughting, like where do we want to position this game? Structures, nothing. The structures, I put structures. This is because of the movement. They wanted to make the game feel a little bit more dynamic, less rigid. So basically, you're able to, as you're moving units around the board, infantry units, you're able to move into a structure, then out of a structure within the same turn instead of having to sit down, garrison, and the next turn move. So it allows for a lot more dynamic movement. I thought that was really cool. They added a lot more victory nodes and capture points. So in the core game, as well as in Company Heroes, the PC game, there are 3 victory points and usually like 1 fuel for each side, 1 munitions for each side. So it's very rigid and made a very complex, like a very dynamic. What's the word? I don't know, but it was very hard to balance that for the board game. It works very well for the PC game, but it really stagnated the game. It really made it hard to get resources to actually make call-ins to get to the point where you're calling in a Tiger tank or calling in a Churchill. So they wanted to add more resource nodes across the board and put them in more interesting places. It looked like when I played that they were modular and we could potentially move them around, but I didn't get clarification on that, so I don't want to say anything too crazy. But I did enjoy, when I did play, having the 5 to 6 nodes comparatively to the 3 that were in the core game, in the original game. It really made it a lot more fun. I was able to increase my units and upgrade and get things on the board more effectively than just calling infantry units for a while. So that was really cool. And then I think that's it. That was all the notes I took. So what are my thoughts? What are my rambling thoughts? First off, I'm really stoked for this game. I really enjoyed the first edition. Like I said, it was hard to get to the table as consistently as I wanted to because it was a little clunky, and they had basic rules and advanced rules. They kind of have the somewhat similar, but they call it first game rules then advanced rules. But it was so hard to, like, they weren't very, the first edition ones didn't really play very well together. They didn't really teach you. It's kind of like 2 different games. And so that was more difficult because I wanted to teach someone new. You feel like, well, I feel like I'm obligated to teach someone these basic rules, but then we would move to advanced rules, and they kind of had a hard time transferring it. So I've played the second edition rule set now. I really like it. I think this is a game that I would highly recommend. So that's it. This is Company Heroes, the board game. Super stoked for this one. I hope you guys are too. Let me know in the comment section down below. How about this? This would be interesting because we got a whole bunch of people from across the world buying this game. I want to know where you're from. Leave an emoji with your flag's country down in the comment section below. Even if you have nothing to say, if you don't have any comments, just leave your flag. I kind of want to know where people are buying this game from across the world. So hope you guys are doing great. Thanks for watching the video. I will talk to you very soon.